Kia ora everybody, and good morning. Nau mai haere mai te kaunihera o ngā roto o Rotorua. And welcome to the public and to those listening and watching in this morning and the media here. Thank you. It's an interesting meeting today. And I would ask if you please make sure your phones are put away and turned off, and remind that it is being live streamed. So now I ask Councillor Kumar if you would like to open the meeting with our council prayer.
Almighty God, who alone is the leader of all humankind and the fountain of all knowledge, send thy blessing upon us, your servants, this day, as we strive to do all things good for the betterment of the people of the Rotorua district. May we be tolerant in ourselves at all times. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. And now I call for any apologies. We have none received. Right? So that's not a motion we have to put. Are there any declarations of interest? There appear to be none. Are there any urgent items that are not on the agenda that need to be dealt with today? Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Worship. Concerning the salaries for the councillors.
Point of order.
Yes, Councillor.
Councillor Gould is going to raise the issue regarding the payment of the increase that was declared by the Higher Salaries Commission, of which we have no control over, which is governed by government legislation. I've tried as tactic in the past to try and prevent us receiving it and being turned down because it is a legislative requirement. So I think he's out of order in raising it today.
It is the remuneration that you were bringing up. It's not an urgent business, and it's already been paid out. So it was paid out on the 1st of August, so I don't accept the item of business.
Okay, but can I just make a comment? I just want to know whether it's an official policy of the council. Because this is not a council decision, there's no requirement for a recommendation to be forwarded to council. Is that the official council policy?
Well, that's absolutely right. It's done by the Remuneration Authority. I think if councillors want to discuss it, that's a green room discussion. It's certainly not a debatable discussion at the council table, so I rule that out of order. Thank you. Right, and no other items? Thank you. We move now to the confirmation of council minutes, page 7 of your order paper. I need a mover and a seconder that the minutes of the council meeting on the 26th of July 2018 be confirmed. Thank you. As a true and accurate record, moved Councillor Rotorua, seconded Councillor Gould. Are there any corrections? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. And now we've got release of confidential items, and of which there are 2. About our partnership and our rating review. Could I have a mover and a seconder for the motion that the report release of confidential items be received? Thank you, Councillor Donaldson, seconded Councillor Hunt. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. Move to recommendations from other committees. I'll give you time, page 15, so that you know what we're talking about. From other committees, that the report recommendation from other committees be received. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Donaldson, seconded Councillor Rotorua. All those in favour, please say aye. 2, that the recommendations of the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee held on the 9th of August be adopted. Thank you. Seconded Councillor Rotorua. All those in favour, please say aye. Right, contrary, carried. And now we move to recommendation 1, the proposed reserve management plan amendments, Lakefront Reserve. Yes.
Can I just signal that I'll move this, but also move it with an amendment
Yes.
that's been brought to my attention by staff?
So you're signalling that at this stage. Thank you. So Henry, you're going to be speaking to this?
Yes, Your Worship, reasonably briefly, but just to recap on the process that's been followed so far, is this was proposed amendment to the Reserves Management Plan, which covers all the gifted reserves in Rotorua, and the particular amendments were to do with the lakefront. And those changes, or those proposed changes, were initially endorsed through conversation and discussion with the Pukeroa Ororowhata Trust. They came to SPNF 2 or 3 weeks ago, and as part of the recommendation going forward was that the RMA Policy Committee would also provide advice on the proposed amendment. So the reason really I'm speaking today is to bring those proposals from the RMA Policy Committee to Council and to give our suggestions on the way forward. And I'll just wait a moment while I think the material's being handed out, and apologies, it's late in the process.
But we did ask for that step in the process, so that's quite acceptable. There may be any material comment that you want to make, other than really tidying it up.
Yeah, probably if you come down the table, which is really the key, starting off at the top, there are 2 or 3 areas around quite technical changes, removal of references to the leases and clarification around kiosks. That's all been reflected in the new drafting. There was also a proposal put forward that traditional names should be included in the section, which we fundamentally agree with, but it's really a subject for submission and to hear from the community on those things. There was a suggestion we should be highlighting more strongly the significant relationship that Te Arawa has with Lake Rotorua and Mokoia Island, and that could be something that was included up front, and we think that's a really good suggestion. And then there were 3 more specific suggestions around cultural practices and consultation and requirements around culling, which were suggested, and our view on that is that they're more properly submission points. We wouldn't really want to be including a whole lot of stuff now, which we haven't talked with the Trust about prior to coming to Council. So our view is, look, they've all got merit, but should be part of the submission process. And what we're really looking for now is hopefully Council approval to take the proposed plan out to the community next week.
And just for clarification, take them out with these amendments, or yeah, thank you. Councillor Stewart, questions?
Thank you for the verbal report this morning, Henry, and the attachment that we've just received. Just a couple of matters regarding the RMA Policy Committee suggested amendments. We do have a formal partnership with Ngāti Whakaura Reserves Protocol, and I thought it would have been, rather than saying matters should be raised through the formal submission, that the draft management plan be referred to the Ngāti Whakaura Reserves Protocol Committee, of which yourself and myself and others are members of, but also the leaders of the Ngāti Whakaura tribe are involved. So I thought that would have been a must, and also that under the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 7th block, that Te Tau be given the opportunity to make a formal presentation as part of our partnership arrangement with them. So I just think we need to highlight those 2 matters. I'm sure the RMA committee won't have objection to that, because, and I think that's what was intended anyway, but I think it needs to be formally noted that we will, because of the formal relationship we have with those 2 bodies, provide them an opportunity to make a presentation to the Ngāti Whakaue Reserves Protocol Committee and to the whole Te Tau board, because,
Yes, Chair.
I mean, if we don't get it right, Madam
Yeah.
Chair, this could hold the whole thing up.
Well, even that process you're suggesting could hold it up for some time, because, Henry, I hope, could you answer the consultation that has happened with the
Yes,
reserves?
through you, Your Worship, and Council, look, fundamentally, totally agree, but that is the process that has been followed. So the plan that came up to you for SPNF had been worked through with the Protocol Committee. So what came up to the Council was an agreed document. So the next stage in the process is to go out, get public comment, then bring it back and reconsider together. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. But your intent is right. But I'm very confident that Henry's responses answers off your concern. Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I agree with Councillor Sturt's intent. The matter that is drawn to my attention this morning is the protocol agreement with Pukeroa Orowhata Trust that Council has. And in that, there's a requirement that all submissions received at a formal hearing will be considered by a statutory hearing subcommittee of the Council, which we have in front of us for approval today, which will, for that purpose, co-opt a representative of the Pukeroa Orowhata Trust as an ex officio community representative, and who shall have the same rights as an elected representative while acting as a subcommittee member. So that's the purpose of asking to move it with the
amendment.
last bullet point as an amendment
So
to the
you're
recommendation.
proposing that amendment?
I am, Your
Is there a
Worship.
seconder? Yes, Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to point out that it's probably not advisable for Councillor Donaldson to actually move this, since he is actually going to be elected onto the committee.
Oh, true.
Therefore, I'm quite happy to take his place.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Very good process. A seconder? Councillor Rokawate, thank you. Are there any more questions for clarification?
I recall the debate we had there, and it was a good debate, and just that I think the public need to know how we came to this. And I recall the debate going smoothly. Even Councillor Bentley suggested that we have a member of the Rotorua Lakes Community Board on there. We thought it was a good idea. Wow, yeah, and we all supported that. And I was really disappointed and surprised later when he voted against this, and yet he took part in the debate, suggested what we do to make this a good working one, and see a disappointing letter to the editor over the weekend. I needed to express that, and I think the public need to know sometimes what goes on in our debates.
Yes, it's sort of an issue that I don't think Henry should clarify. But there was clearly confusion between both Councillor Bentley's letter and Councillor Gould's post to the RDR website, getting a little bit confused about what sits in long-term plan funding and what we were actually discussing, which was about the reserve management plan amendments. So they were totally different issues and not very relevant to what we're discussing today, but you're absolutely right. Factually, they need to be corrected. Councillor Hunt.
Thank you. I'd just like to say that the RMA committee enjoyed doing this process. We had a pretty robust debate about what should be in and what shouldn't be in, and felt we'd done a fairly good job of tidying things up in order for it to go out for public consultation. So that doesn't mean that the process is over. Far from it. It's actually the beginning opportunity for the community to have their say and to reflect back. And I would expect there may well be some amendments and additions to that. Just one final typo that didn't get picked up, Henry, Village Green and Lake Road, the road needs a capital. Sorry for that. It was in the draft, thank you for that. But I look forward to the submissions as they come in. And we are simply updating an out-of-date policy. And it is normal council business to do this, and this one's just come up for timely review.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for clarification? Councillor Donaldson. A comment? Yes.
Yeah, so you touched on it, Your Worship, and you touched on a social media post by Councillor Gould, which invites submissions and suggestions around how the money could be better spent. And that's quite misleading in my view, and invites consultation. That's not what we're going out for consultation on. The funding for the lakefront was put in the LTP and was passed on the 28th of June as part of the LTP. It is merely on amendments to the reserve management plan. So I think that needs to be clarified quite clearly, because we don't want people wasting their time making submissions on a matter that's not out for consultation, which is the funding.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm pleased that these amendments have come forward today because it gives us an opportunity to get things right from the outset. And it also shows the value of the RMA Policy Committee. We have experienced commissioners who have added value to the process, and as I say, I value the fact that they've made these amendments, and it really means that we're hoping to get it right from the start. So thank you for the commissioners for the work. Thank you.
I don't know whether it's appropriate here, but I did mention in the debate that I thought that Councillor Hunt should be the chair of the committee that will hear these public submissions. I don't know whether that's missed or that it's up to that committee to elect a chair. I'll be guided by staff in terms of that. Thank you.
I've just taken advice from our democracy team, and it's up to the committee. But your comments are noted. Each motion, and I'll read them out. First is that pursuant to section 41(5)(a) of the Reserves Act 1977, Council adopt written submissions on the proposed plan would not materially assist in its preparation. All those in favour? Aye. Contrary? Carried. 2, that Council adopt the draft amendments to the Lakefront Reserve section of the Rotorua Township's Reserve Management Plan, once reviewed by the RMA Policy Committee, be adopted for public consultation pursuant to section 41(6) of the Reserves Act 1977. All those in favour? Aye. 3, that Council appoint the following elected members be appointed to hear submissions with a quorum of 4 and make recommendations to the Council on the draft amendments to the Lakefront Reserve section of the Rotorua Township's Reserve Management Plan. Councillor Karen Hunt, Councillor Charles Sturt, Councillor Tania Tapsell, Councillor Dave Donaldson, a member of Te Tauto o Te Arawa, and a member of the Rotorua Lakes Community Board. And a co-opted representative of the Pukeroa Orua Whata Trust, ex officio. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? Aye. You wish it recorded against? Okay. Against. Be recorded. Okay, we now move to the next item. A mover and a seconder for recommendation 2, the disposal of land, the service lane in Fenton Street. Thank you. Moved Councillor Hunt, seconded Councillor Sturt. I'll read it. That Council resolved that the Fenton Street service lane situated between 1136 and 1138 Fenton Street is declared surplus to requirement and disposed of to the WD Homes 2000 Trust to assist with the redevelopment of their adjacent site following the revocation of reservation process pursuant to the Reserves Act 1977. I put that motion. Do I have a seconder? Yeah. Oh, we do. Are there any questions or discussion? It was pretty well discussed, I think, at the committee. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. A mover now, please, for recommendation 3, the replacement of Public Places Liquor Control Bylaw 2009 with an alcohol ban bylaw. 1, that Council approve the statement of proposal attachment 2 of the report and alcohol ban bylaw for special consultation, and that Council hears and deliberates on any public submissions made to the proposed alcohol ban bylaw. I have a mover, Councillor Kent, seconder, Councillor Rotorua-Tate. The motion is up for discussion. Councillor Tapsell.
It was more so a note that got brought up in the committee about the mention in the report of a police report that was justifying why we should change to this, and we're yet to see that, so if that could still please be circulated.
Brought to us. Thank you. Any further questions? We'll note that. Okay. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Settled. The Gold not take part. Move to recommendation 4, a mover and a seconder for recommendation 4, Rotorua District Council Holdings Limited annual audit. 1, that Council exempt under Section 7 of the Local Government Act 2002, Rotorua District Council Holdings Limited from its reporting and audit requirements. 2, that Council resolve that no financial statements be prepared for RDC Holdings Limited while the exemption applies. And 3, that Council resolve that the exemption identified in point 2 and 3 of the recommendation extend for a period of 3 years, commencing for the 2018-2019 financial year, or until RDC Holdings Limited begins trading. Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Gould.
Your Worship?
Yes. Open for
I'd
discussion.
like to suggest and move an amendment. I believe that in actual fact point 3 should actually read that the committee recommends to Council that the exemption identified in point 2 and 1 and 2, not just point
1
2.
and 2. Thank
Above.
you. You second that amendment? Thank you. Any further questions or clarification? No? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. Yes.
Earlier in this report, 3 councillors wanted their votes recorded against item 3 on the recommendation of the Reserves Management Plan amendments. Are they recording their votes against because they are opposed to the like myself, Councillor Hunt, or do they, I mean, it's all very well to record your vote against if you don't have an amendment, and then we read in the paper the reason why. I just wondered whether they had an objection to the 4 councillors that were nominated, and if they have any replacements, if that's their reasoning for recording their vote against.
Those councillors who chose to have their vote recorded against the reason behind their vote, but we note that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gould? No, we don't need it. Thank you, Councillor Gould. Councillor Gould, we don't need it. Thank you. Right, we move now to the recommendation number 5, speed limit bylaw. I need a mover and a seconder that Council resolve that changes to speed limits on the following roads are made in accordance with the requirements of the rule setting of speed limits 2017. Thank you, Councillor Rotorua-Tate, seconded Councillor Hunt. If we just clarify, it was really the Fryer to Casca Road and the Casca to Te Wairenga Road that was subject to. Yes, Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to remind everyone that I have declared a conflict on this matter, so will not be taking part.
Thank you. We note that. Am I going too fast? No, you're right. So any discussion? Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to point out that some residents out there wanted one uniform speed limit, but the association out there were unhappy with the present recommendation coming through.
Councillor Gould, that was all discussed in committee, so well canvassed in committee. We don't re-debate. We were all very aware of every position in committee.
Who at the previous council meeting asked that this section of the roading be set aside and be re-debated and reconsidered at council. We got a full report from staff. Justification for the recommendation that is in front of us was pretty clear to me. There's one individual that isn't happy, but in terms of the Ratepayers Association out there, I understood that they were happy with the recommendation. And you're right, Madam Chair, the main point of contention was from Friar Road to Casca Road, which has now gone down to 60, and I personally support that, and I think there'll be general public support for that move. Thank you.
Thank you. It also a lesson about taking time before we put it back to council. So I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. We move now to a mover and a seconder for recommendation 6, the rates review process. That council adopts the rates review process, timeframes and workshop dates. Do I have a mover? Yes, Councillor Donaldson, seconder. Councillor Hunt. Is there any discussion? Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be voting against this for the simple reason I think it should be open, not workshops, and the public should be given an opportunity right at the beginning to make their recommendations about the rating review.
Una, would you like to speak to that? JP? Just that issue, JP, as opposed to our stakeholder workshops?
Madam Chair, as we presented at the committee meeting, the proposal we have was to actually to run focus groups so that we can give all ratepayers the opportunities and to put their views forward. When you just go for a submission process, often you only get certain groups of the community participating. What we've put forward to you in that discovery phase, initial phase, was to ensure that quite a wide category of ratepayer types had the opportunity to have their views recognised and recorded as problems or issues for councillors to then consider in those workshops. And as we've stated previously, any changes to the rating framework requires public consultation under the Rating Act. So there will be a public consultation phase once you've gone through your initial consideration of the issues, which actually are intended to ensure that everyone gets their opportunity to put forward their views on the problems and issues with the rating framework.
Thank you for that, because I think there's a perception here that we're jumping a process. I want to comment. And we're not. We're actually trying to find by these stakeholder meetings where are the problems, so that we know before we go to setting rates where the challenges for us as councillors are. I think this is a more robust process than just going to consultation. Myself, Councillor Kumar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Contrary to what JP's rational explanation was, I will support my fellow councillor and don't support this workshop and rate review process. I think they should be the more robust involvement with the public.
I will just challenge that. Have you been on a rates review process before? Because this is about, we put another step in it. This has got an even more robust approach than was ever previously done. That these stakeholder meetings will identify where we've got some challenges. That's a very good process to come back before next year's setting of rates, which will be open, as you're asking for consultation. I wouldn't just accept somebody, because you think you have to, but I think this is a process that I'm very confident is more robust than this council has ever undertaken. Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd support what you're saying, and having been through 2 or 3 rating review processes, all we've done is put out, and I remember quite clearly CV 234, we just threw it out there.
Yeah.
As JP has explained, it has to go out for public consultation. The gallery there was full. The mayor was called Mussolini from someone standing at the door before he stormed out. It was ridiculous. If that ain't broke, don't fix it. So that's the purpose of the stakeholder groups. We go to stakeholder groups, see what the issues are. We know what some of the issues are. It's short-term holiday rentals and equity around those issues and those sorts of things. But the stakeholder groups will then help us formulate a framework which then goes out for public consultation, and any Joe citizen out there can put a submission in and be heard on it if they so desire. So that's the process that we're approving today, and I agree with Her Worship that it's far more robust than any we've done in the past, and I fully support it.
Thank you. Charles?
This will be the 4th rates review I've been involved with. One of them was as chair of finance at the time, and I think the issue why Councillor Gould and possibly Councillor Kumar, I'm presuming that the reason why we have these workshops is to actually get the understanding of the councillors as to what the process is and what the different permutations of rates in terms of categories of ratepayers, the differentials, what impacts pluses and minuses have, and getting the ownership of whatever we decide
Point of order.
before we go out for public submission.
Point of order, Councillor Stern.
No, Councillor Sturt always seems to think what we think.
Well, I can only
possibly
think
do
what he
that.
thinks, Madam Chair, on what he says. And what he said was, he supports Councillor Gould, and Councillor Gould's submission was that the public is not involved. What I'm saying is that before we engage the public, the councillors around this table got to know what they're doing, what the permutations are of the rates review, and how it affects each ratepayer group. That's what the workshop process is for. It impacts valuations. There's all sorts of other issues that have to be traversed. It's just not simply saying, oh, we're going to move 6% off residential and put it on farming or whatever like that. I mean, and the other thing, Madam Chair, the challenge is the councillors around this table have to attend the workshops to understand. And that's the difference, because some councillors aren't attending workshops.
Absolutely. Councillor Hunt.
Actually, I'm just going to support what Councillor Sturt has said. This is professional development for councillors. That we're often accused of being uneducated, no skill base by people in the community. You all know which letters I'm referring to. And this is what the workshop is about. It is to upskill councillors so they understand what their decision making is about. If we have a public meeting and everybody's talking, we have no idea when it comes to decision making about what even a rating review under the Local Government Act is. It's not the same as it is when you're in private business. We have a whole set of different criteria we have to meet. There's a different language spoken, and it behoves us to educate ourselves under the Rating Act so we understand the ramifications on every level. And we have to take the helicopter view. It requires, as I've said before, people to step back from mine and my neighbours and my best mates to the whole district. So it is part of our professional development. That's the point of it. We go out for public consultation, but then we are skilled up in order to make those decisions.
So it's a two-step process.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, you know, for our workshops, and there were 13 or 14 of them that we had, and many of us tried to get to as much as we can. I'm glad I got to those workshops, and thank Una and all the other staff who put a lot of effort into making these 3-hour, 4-hour sessions valuable for us. And a good example is the lakefront development. Gosh, I was glad I was there. I was glad Sir Bob Harvey came down from Auckland to present to us. Because look, even after valuable workshops like that, we still have people like Councillor Goulden confused, and others who seem to still get the process wrong even after a valuable workshop. But I think this is, and I've sat through many rating reviews, and this is going to be valuable.
I think there's a question that requires clarification that I'm hearing here. There's a difference between workshops and focus groups, and we're going through a process with focus groups. Would you like to clarify that, Jay, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to clarify that the focus groups were a process that we had established to make sure that we could get the views around the problems and issues from different parts of our community. And if you recall, the report we put forward included a whole range of different stakeholder groups whose views are sometimes heard and sometimes not heard. To be effective for you as an elected body to make those decisions about the allocation of rates, you need to understand everyone's issues and problems with rates. Councillor Hunt identified a couple of those, but we're talking about obviously families and individuals on fixed incomes. We're talking about high value properties and higher value residential areas. We're talking about rural residential issues. Within the commercial sector, absolutely is the accommodation question around home accommodation, but also the impact on the accommodation sector is in the hotels. We've also got industrial, commercial, and also a range of issues identified by the inner city groups as well. So, and that's obviously ignoring some of the previous comments we've received from groups like the farming sector, particularly federated farmers. So everyone has an opinion on the fairness and equity around their rates and who should pay for the services that are provided. So the intention of the focus groups was to make sure that we got a balanced view from all of our ratepayers, because you are setting a taxing regime to allocate those rates, so that when you go into those workshops, as Her Worship asked, which is where you need to start looking at, so what were those issues, what were those problems, why is it in this way and not that way, and you have the chance then to explore how you allocate those and those options. We had also identified that part of that workshop work was to identify some rating framework principles through which you can evaluate some of those balancing equations. So the workshops are an opportunity for you to get back all of that community information so that you can then evaluate it and determine what options need to be explored. And as I've previously said, at the end of that process, any changes to a rating framework require full public consultation.
Councillor Rotorua and Councillor Kent.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The focus groups, I think, are a good opportunity for the community to be involved early on through the focus groups, through their membership of the focus groups. It gives them an opportunity to highlight and signal to the staff some of the possibly extra work that's needed to be done, and it can be done as soon as possible. So I think and it's a proven process, so it will be good. The thing that I value most actually is the workshops, and it comes back to what Councillor Stewart has said. There is nothing more embarrassing than seeing a councillor dither and dick around and can't explain to the community clearly what we're trying to do through the rates review. It is highly embarrassing, and so that's why I value the workshops, because I have to be able to clearly articulate to the community when I'm asked about the process, about the rates review, about the implications. And I can tell Councillor Kumar, if we don't have the workshops and we leave ourselves open as councillors, if we're not fully informed about the process and the implications on the various sectors of our community. So I'll certainly be attending the workshops as well. The value is undisputed. Thank you.
Councillor Kent and then Councillor Kumar.
Thank you, Your Worship. Not wishing to put words in fellow councillors' mouths, I think the crux of the matter we've got here stems from a very lengthy rating review report that was put out and circulated by Dr. McPherson, who seems to be rather irate that he is not being included.
Yes.
suggesting that the actual question that my fellow councillor should be asking is how does RDRR become involved in one of the focus groups that can make submissions for consideration by us when we get to our workshops to understand what it is we're trying to fix?
A good comment and observation. They are but one focus group. Yeah. Right, Councillor Kumar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All I have to say is that if only we could get off the previous, for the last 18 months that I've been involved with, what is the percentage of councillors that have attended the workshops? And it will be seen, rather than us pimping over here that yes, we come to workshops and we get informed. I believe I probably have 100% record like Councillor Mark Gold, unlike some others that keep saying yes, we get more knowledge out of that. The thing is, I stand firmly over here in what I believe, that this workshop is a waste of time, it's a waste of resources, and it's a propaganda, so I stand by it. If someone believes that it's good, they should attend the workshop.
Political comments and actually showed a little bit of out of order. So I'm now going to put the motion. Councillor Kent, Councillor Gould.
Chair, workshops are fine, but why can't you just invite the general public, then they can see what's going on and how the council gets to their decision? Now that's all that I'm asking is make it open.
Councillor Gould, you clearly haven't heard the advice of officers and you've got it all around the wrong way. Your intention will be met after we've worked out what the issues are that we need to take forward in the setting of rates next year. I've heard that time and time again. I'm not sure that you've still got it clear. Councillor Donaldson.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. My final comment, I guess, that I would make in response to what Councillor Gould's just said is that's the job we're elected to do.
That's right.
We're elected to put a rating framework out for public consultation, and we do it after officers have held focus groups, tell us what's broken, what the community is saying from different sectors. We have some workshops and we come together as elected members with a proposed framework, and then it goes out for anyone in the public, I'll say it again, to make a submission, whether they want to do it in writing or come in here and front us and tell us what they think. So everyone gets their turn. But to invite everybody to come to a workshop, I'm sorry, that's our responsibility as elected members to come up with a framework for consultation, not the wider community's job.
So because it's important to get this right, I'm going to ask those that haven't had a chance to speak. Yes.
Just through you, Your Worship. Look, I, as Chief Executive, are very concerned about the use of the word propaganda.
Yes.
Staff have actually identified and given to you a list of various parts of our community where we consider that there are differential effects as a result of a rating framework. What staff are doing will be to work with those different groups of the community to understand their views, to formulate a clear expression of what their concerns are, if there are indeed concerns, and then to provide you with clear information about those different parts of our community's views in the context of workshops. There is no way that that process could be called propaganda. It is simply listening to the various parts of our community which actually will have clear views about the rating framework, and staff's role here will be to actually take those views and to provide them to you for your consideration.
On that note, Councillor Kumar, I take personal offence at your remark that it is propaganda leading a process, and I wonder if you'd like to withdraw and apologise for that remark. We're trying to do the right thing.
I'm really sorry for how you feel, but I will not.
Councillor Sturt.
I I hear what Councillor Kumar and others have said, and particularly Councillor Gould, but I think we need to get it right. We are currently, according to JP, are having discussions with different focus groups. The focus group issues that they raise come to our workshops so that we can understand what's happening out there in the community. We then take on board some of those, or to discuss those issues, and come up with a rating framework, which then has to go back out to the public for public consultation. And individuals and those groups that are even part of the focus groups have the opportunity to make a public submission or because of the significance of a rating review. So I just wondered whether and then we meet and we hear those objections or amendments or support of the rating framework as proposed from the public consultation, and then we bring it to full council as a draft. It's then approved and it comes into place on the 1st of July 2018 or whatever other date we decide. Just because we're having a rates review, we may not change anything. We might think the system that we've got in front of us and best meets the needs of our whole community. So I think there should be no confusion in terms of we want the public's input. The public have been involved, JP, through the focus groups, and they will be, and you'll be working on that prior to us going to those workshops. I just want to make sure the process is correct, because I don't want someone going off on a tangent and saying that somebody's already said that it's propaganda, but somebody's pushing their own barrow in terms of staff, the staff view. This is driven by the focus groups in our community. I won't be listening to any staff view. They can have their own view and make a submission as they want as individuals. But the process has to be squeaky clean. I believe it is. So I would just like, if I could, Madam Chair, ask JP, where are we at with these focus groups and how active? Because I think that will allay some of the fears that Councillor Gould has. He wants to make sure that the average Joe public has an opportunity to have a say.
Your Worship, if I can just clarify, nothing has started as yet. Obviously, we had a recommendation from committee to council, so we're waiting for you to endorse the recommendation on the table. So behind the scenes, we've just been preparing some process steps so that we can call for invitations or put out invitations for people to put forward their names to participate in the process, but that's as far as we've gone as to starting the process at this stage. So waiting for your ratification of this recommendation.
Councillor Bentley and then Councillor Rotorua.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to get the staff's interpretation of exactly what is a focus group.
We can help with that, I'm sure. We've had them before on many occasions. We had them for the setting of the Rotorua Way.
What I'm saying is who partakes, who makes up the focus group, and who excludes or includes different people with different opinions.
No, would you like to answer that, JP?
Your Worship, just a focus group is and someone mentioned it, they're a generally used technique. What we're looking to do is to put out advertisements seeking people to put forward their names to participate. Obviously there'd be sessions identified. We'd be looking at putting together groups of people to sit within a focus group, potentially of similar sectors or issues, so that the conversation can actually be focused around what they see as the challenges and issues with the current rating framework. In one of those sort of focus groups, obviously they're facilitated, and for most people you also have to assume a variable knowledge of the rates and the rating framework. So there'd be a little introduction and some information about the rates relevant to that focus group's area, and then an opportunity for them to raise and discuss issues. Often you gain the greatest benefit in focus groups and actually other people hearing issues raised by other individuals. This will all be recorded, summarised, and that will be part of the information that we would then use to bring back to councillors, so that you may evaluate it against those principles and determine what issues you believe need to be addressed.
thank you. Councillor Rotorua, then Councillor Tapps.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I've sat here and I would like to address the elephant in the room, and this is about the Rotorua District Ratepayers Association, what is it, RDDR, and their non-inclusion in the focus groups. I know that the mention of that organisation gets a lot of people flustered and upset around this table. But I want to know if they would be adding value as a member of the focus groups. You know, at some stage, it just worries me that this is a representative organisation, so they say. They're not included. I suspect that there are areas that they would add value to, and I want to know why. Well, I mean, they've obviously been excluded, haven't been included, and I'm thinking about how helpful or unhelpful that is. So I really think we should perhaps address that.
To put that to the Chief Executive, I've never felt that they're excluded, but can you clarify that?
Look, there is no exclusion here. The point of the focus groups is to try to understand the various diverse parts of our community. So what we do not have is a community that is in any way sort of homogenous. There are very clear different groups which are affected by rating quite differentially, and we hear those views when they're expressed. So we have rural communities, we have within that though farming communities, we have lakeside communities, we have low socioeconomic, low income households, we have high value households. In other words, we have people on fixed incomes. There are many different sets of circumstances in ratepayers in Rotorua. So in setting up the focus groups, what they were intended to try and capture is as many different aspects of different communities across Rotorua. Now, as JP has said, the process to select those focus groups will be simply to actually put them open for people to put themselves forward as to participation in them. And anyone can actually do that if they see themselves as actually representing or being part of one of the communities that are captured underneath a particular focus group.
Councillor Tapsell and then Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I must say I do always find it disappointing when the ignorance of a few hinder the progress of many, and I think we're starting to lose sight of what this recommendation is actually looking for. And if we remember that this actually came about because the Lakes Community Board worked very hard, very consistently to get us to have a rates review, and we've finally got it now, and I think this discussion is just completely hindering where we're trying to go. I'm perfectly happy with what's up there, and in the committee I spoke rather passionately on how much better it could be, and since then staff have come back and taken on that consideration, and they've gone back to the Lakes Community Board as well. So they're doing so much work behind the scenes for this. It's a very simple thing. It's one line that we're putting through now. There's a lot of detail behind it. The detail has been mentioned in the report that comes to the committee. The detail is still being worked on now, and really we should just get on with it and do it because it's the best thing for our community.
Right, and Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can we just spell this out in words of 2 syllables so there is actually no misunderstanding? If Dr. McPherson or any other member of the public wishes to participate in the focus groups, all they've got to do is respond to our advertisements asking for those who would like to join the focus groups. QED, that's it. It's as simple as that. So can we now please get on with the motion?
A quick debate. I'm going to rule out any of the questions. Is it something new and different? I'll listen if it's new.
Following on from what Councillor Kent has said before, and people have said it, the elephant in the room, I was hoping maybe is this possible that we can take it even a step further. Reluctantly, I would be prepared to come to an extra workshop with just the RDRRs themselves. I would be prepared, and And those who think this is a propaganda, well, they're going to accuse everybody. But, you know, they're a huge opposition to everything we do. I would be prepared to come to another workshop, but I promise not to mention the 237K that's been owed to us from.
Look, that's not new. They're no different actually from any other group that would like to take part. So, no, we trust the council staff to set up a process that reflects the robustness of this discussion. I'm now going to put.
Can I just ask a point of clarification of JB? In terms of the focus groups, and that's what I agree with Councillor Taps, I think we need to get on with it. I think the RDRR issue is a side issue. The Rural Community Board requested we do a rates review. The general public have agreed. But I look at focus groups being rural, urban, lakeside, iwi, elderly, tourist operators, industrial, manufacturing, home industry, pastoral, home accommodation and livestock. Those are the focus groups. And if the RDRRs or any member of the public or any ratepayer group wants to make a submission in terms of our focus, which is a rates review, in those focus group areas, so be it. We won't turn it away, and I will support the right of the RDRRs to make those submissions, but to have them sit on a pedestal, to have a special day, no, I can't support that.
No, well, I'm going to close the debate now. I think you made it very succinct, everybody, but I hope that this has clarified for everybody the process, because it's a new process. So I'm now going to put the motion. All those in favour that council adopts the rates review process, the timeframes and the workshop dates. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Contrary? You wish your vote recorded against?
Yes. So you don't want a rates review?
You don't want a rates? Yeah. So the whole discussion, Councillor Gould, has been a waste of time as far as your ears are concerned. That's exactly what we clarified, with many people putting in to assure us all that it would be open to consultation. However,
if we have that extra workshop, then those three will attend.
Now, we'll move on to staff report, page 20, the adoption of the spatial plan. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Tapsell, that the report adoption of spatial plan be received. Seconder, Councillor Donaldson. Thank you, and welcome up, Portia. Thank you, Portia, and this is also a new document for us.
Okay, te Maria. So, here this morning to just take you through a few slides on my report, just the journey that we've been through to arrive at our spatial plan that you've got before you today. So, you'll remember that the spatial plan is that crucial building block for our future planning and decision making. The spatial plan fully aligns with our Vision 2030 and is a key tool to implement that vision. Greg Clark, an advisor to the Auckland Spatial Plan, said that a spatial plan is a lens for observing economic, social and environmental trends from a single perspective and seeks to address multiple challenges and goals simultaneously. Our spatial plan is not just a council tool, it's a tool and a guiding document for all government organisations, utility and infrastructure providers, right down to investors and individuals. So the question is, why now? Why have we gone through this process in the last year? So over the last 20 years, population growth has been 0 to 0 in Rotorua until the last couple of years, and that population growth has shown that it's growing at a rate well beyond our conservative population projections. And for this reason, last year, Rotorua was recognised as a medium growth area under the National Policy Statement. What that says is that we need to make sure we've got measures put in place and that we're providing and enabling that growth. So now could not be a better time to put a spatial plan in place for Rotorua. The recent Infometrics report that came out last week is no different to any others that we've seen recently. And what it's showing is that our house prices are increasing, our GDP and traffic is up, and our guest nights are also increasing. What this is showing is that the secret is out. People are moving to our city. They're moving for our environment, for our culture, our authenticity, and our opportunities. We know that we cannot close our doors to growth, because without land available, all that happens is that as people move here, affordability decreases, and left unplanned, it will result in an ad hoc development of our city to areas and depths that are unexpected. Other cities have fallen into this trap before. The spatial plan says, okay, what is important to us? Let's identify it. These are the areas we need to protect for our future generations, but let us make sure that we're prepared and that we're providing for a variety of lifestyle options for those who are arriving, and that we're enhancing the lifestyle of those who already live here. The spatial plan is an important guiding document. It's not a statutory document, but what it enables us to do is meet our aspirations for 2030. It sets out our actions to enable us to have an active environment, our diverse opportunities, our strong culture, and our easy lifestyle. So while we know what our destination looks like, without having a spatial plan in place, it means we're driving blind in the dark. But our spatial plan is our roadmap. Once in place, it will guide our whole community. It means that our community can see our destination and can manoeuvre the bends in the road along the way. So how did we get here? What was our journey over the last couple of years? So back in 2016, we undertook a lot of extensive investigation and research, and that enabled us to put a consultation document out in April of last year. The consultation document was a really high-level document that actually just said, hey, let's have a conversation about this. This is what our population growth could possibly look like. Let's have a good conversation. So through April and October of last year, we undertook all of those conversations. There were hui, workshops, and community meetings throughout the district. That information that we gathered and that conversation that we had enabled us to build that draft spatial plan, and that was released in October of last year. We started to receive submissions on that draft spatial plan, and we held those hearings in December of last year, and we also had those World Cafe style hearings also. In June this year, the deliberations were held, and you made those decisions on those deliberations. That enabled us to come together and present the final spatial plan for you today. So just a reminder on all of that consultation that happened in last year. So you'll see on the left in the blue is the discussion document, and on the right is the draft spatial plan. So we had a lot of people engaged over that time and with this document. And what you'll see in the draft spatial plan is a lot less people engaged. And that was mostly because the feedback we were receiving was that the comments and feedback that was submitted in the consultation document, they saw those comments coming through in the draft spatial plan and felt like they didn't need to submit. So the key changes to the document that you have for you today. So the decisions that you made in June, there were two key themes. Firstly, the population growth projections, they were not clear enough, and your decision in June was to include more detail around the high growth scenario. I've included additional information in the final document, and I've also included that national policy statement diagram that you saw just previously around why we have to provide more housing, more area than may be required, because what ends up actually happening to what is actually zoned is quite different. The second theme was the concerns around the growth area at Okaraka, and you made that decision in June to recategorise the growth area from now to next. That has been done, and more information has been added to help clarify as to why Okaraka is included and the reasoning around the timing. I've also included more information around the definition of a neighbourhood centre as well. Also, your decision in June included a request from Councillor Kent with regards to ensuring that we consider the impact on forestry and farming and any land use change, and I have included this in the final document. There were also minor edits agreed to, and these included changes such as those requested by the Bay of Plenty Regional Council and additional information with regards to climate change and weather events as requested by Councillor Tapsell. So the next steps from here. On adoption, we'll start working on an implementation plan, and the actions listed in the plan will be worked into a timeline, and people responsible will be allocated to those actions. And that will enable us to move through to the next round of conversations with our communities around those actions. We're planning on taking that program to the RMA Policy Committee, and then what we'll do is we'll come back to you at an Operations and Monitoring Committee with that implementation program. So it's important to note that this is actually a real milestone event for our community. We already have other councils looking to us for leadership around this spatial plan because they're looking at it as an example of a collaborative and community-orientated process. The Rotorua Spatial Plan is one of a handful in New Zealand, and it is not required, but it is optional, and the process has not been laid out before us. But you took up that challenge, and we've navigated through some really challenging conversations with our community. This has enabled us to understand what growth looks like, to prepare ourselves, to welcome it, and to provide opportunities for our existing citizens. It will give cause for those to stay and choices for new ones arriving. It means we will not be caught out with ad hoc development as so many others have. So the spatial plan is now reflects your decision made in June and is available for adoption.
To take us back on the journey that we've been on, this is a very innovative approach, and we tried to lead a discussion through the Zone 2 that perhaps other councils could look at the value of the process, and it has been noticed nationally that we've undertaken this journey, and that was partly why I have to say I was invited on a panel with Infrastructure New Zealand about how Rotorua is gearing up to cope with the growth and knowing the possible growth that we're about to plan for. And also tomorrow at the Property Council, who have come to hold their conference in Rotorua because they're so intrigued about what we're doing. So as councillors, you're to be really congratulated for going on this journey with council staff. And it's certainly well noticed, and I think it goes back to the demographics of showing that at last we're seeing growth, and we should be congratulated for that. And we know the type of growth that we want by the spatial plan process. So I think we'll open it for questions, and there will be questions. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to raise the issue of correspondence that was received yesterday from Dr. Tony Withers, which I received and I find quite disturbing, and I believe other councillors have received as well. I don't know whether that has been tabled for all councillors or not.
I think so. I think we've all received.
Okay, the issues in the nutshell are Dr. Withers questions a couple of very serious matters that would, in my view, totally cause the spatial plan, if adopted, to be overruled by judicial review. The two principal issues which concern me are particularly with respect to Lake Okareka and the development out there. The issue being, first of all, that the Lake Okareka Community Association apparently knew nothing about the spatial plan and submissions and everything else, and at the time was being chaired by a senior staff member from this council. That concerns me greatly, because there is potentially a conflict of interest there. And secondly, the information that was provided to council in the form of a report from Ray Anderson Consulting made recommendations to us and presented a table which, when you actually look at it, is absolute rubbish. The table, for example, assesses on a scale of 1 to 5 the likes of suitability of land, and as the doctor points out, suitability of land, how does land become more suitable if you change the time frame of development from now to next? And she's got it scoring 3 in one category and 5 in others. That's absolute rubbish. And the bulk of her table is like that. This was concocting an outcome. This was not providing an accurate picture of what we should be considering. It is my recommendation to council, in view of the fact that just recently another council has had a major decision overturned on the basis of inadequate consultation in judicial review. I can't remember the actual council, but it's just recent. I think we should actually leave this matter on the table to have these matters reviewed by staff and a report come back to us. There is no point in going ahead, saying we're going ahead with this to have it challenged and thrown out, the whole document thrown out. We are better to address, is there an issue? Are there problems there? And if so, fix them before it goes out. And that's my recommendation. So I'd like perhaps the Chief Executive to comment on my suggestion.
Legitimate points. We all received the email and we've all been aware of the issues in Okareka. If you could go back to the challenges that you've outlined there, which was the way forward in that community. And then we'll have other councillors speak. JP, do you want to just clarify the issues raised?
Your Worship, I haven't seen the email, but I think I was trying to get, and maybe Hilda can help us because our remote's not working here. Hilda, can you go back to the consultation slide, which is about 4 slides back? Councillor, without knowing the specifics of the email, can I assure you we have spoken to different residents' associations. We had a discussion document. We've attended various AGMs and public meetings. And so I'm unclear as to how we have not talked to a number of these community members. We also received a number of submissions. We also received a submission from LOCA, which is the Lake Okareka Community Association, through the process. So, and we've also spoken to landowners prior to that during the discussion document phase. So a number of communities have been aware of this. Also, the fact that that community falls within the Lakes Community Board area, they were well aware of the discussion document and have also participated and organised various public meetings with residents' associations at different times. So, Your Worship, I believe we have been involved in talking to all communities that have wanted to speak to us. We have provided information, we have attended meetings, and as a consequence we also received various submissions. Even so far as saying I've attended a meeting with members of the LOCA executive, if that's the right word for it, post decision making in June as well, where I was asked to explain what the decisions were that had been made after the deliberations in June. So my understanding, Your Worship, is that we have provided a significant amount of information to the public through various meetings and have received submissions to that effect. So I'm unclear on what basis anyone could therefore consider a
Point of
judicial
order,
review.
Madam Chair. Can I suggest we take a 5-minute break and allow JP just to review a copy of what he's just received, that everyone else has received, because there's no point in him talking about something he hasn't seen.
It's necessary. I mean, JP can read it while we're discussing. I do want others to have the opportunity. We should never be so politically fickle as to take one email from anybody in the public that could challenge a whole process. Do you want to speak to it, Jeff?
Through you, Your Worship, if I can make a couple of comments. So the point that JP is making is that this plan has actually been out for public consultation. It has actually been publicly advertised and notified, and submissions invited. To try and therefore assert that there's been no consultation, I think would be difficult to substantiate. The second point with regard to Mr. Mr. Weston did not actually take part on any discussion under his, when he was actually chairing the Residents Association. He stepped back at those times, and secondly, he also actually resigned from his position last year. The other point that I would make, and I think it's probably the critical one, is that you also need to look at the nature of the decision that has actually been made in the spatial plan.
Yes.
Now, the nature of this decision is that, in fact, that the thing that needs to occur is a review of the Lakes A zone, 8 Lakes A zone within the district plan. Now, within that review, of course, is that will itself be subject to extensive community consultation, that all residents will have again the opportunity to express their views as to how they see development occurring, if at all. So really, the only decision being made in the spatial plan is actually to consult further. Really, that is the effect of the decision that has actually been promoted in the spatial plan. So again, I'd go back onto those points. Firstly, the spatial plan has been publicly advertised through a highly publicised process, and then secondly, the decision of the spatial plan with regards to development within this area is just simply to say this needs to actually be the subject of consultation, and that will take place through the Lakes A zone process.
Thank you. That's why I asked for the challenges, not the journey, if you put it, and that was in our report. Councillor Hunt and then Councillor...
Thank you. Yes, the public information, it went out on every channel. I think this often happens, the length of the time it takes from when we first talk to people and when we actually get to this point, we have people forgetting, new people arriving, and we often get a knee-jerk response like this at the very last minute when someone has just realised something has happened. So this is not uncommon at this stage. As far as Lake Okaraka goes, our spatial plan document is a signal for future district plan changes. It does not decide the outcome of those changes. It decides the question we will ask in those plan reviews. It decides the format, and in this case, for this community, it is Lakes A zone. So we have heard the community. They said, don't do it now, we're not ready.
Yep.
And the Lakes A is the appropriate channel for all of this information to come through in a hearing process. It is not by email in order to flick us this way and to flick us the other way. And we mustn't lose sight of the fact that the right process is the hearings process for any plan change. This gives, as Portia has said, a roadmap forward. It gives developers confidence, it gives residents confidence about where we are going. Every 5 years, we'll have another look at it. We've signalled our first review will be in 5 years' time. Some of this may have happened, some of it may be finished or part way through, and I would hope that Lakes A zone would at least have been initiated. It will be a very big process, and every single person in that community will have an opportunity to have their say about it. So I think we've actually understood and heard what that community has said. We've put it into next. We've taken a pause. We're not hurrying in there, but we have signalled that we want to have this conversation. That's all we've signalled. So I fully support the adoption of the spatial plan today, and I'm happy to move that way when we get to that point.
Could you just clarify, JP, really, when was the Lakes A zone first established?
Ooh,
It's some time ago now.
Your Worship,
12
my understanding was it was pre our last district plan review, and that was why Lakes A zone was not part of the latest district plan review, was that it just been through the process of coming out of the Environment Court, and at that point the rest of the district plan went into a review. Unfortunately, of course, that review took over 10 years.
Your Worship, it was 1998 was Judge Bollard's decision on the Lakes A zone, and so it would have been after that because it went to the Environment Court, and it did not get addressed in the most recent district plan because it hadn't been in place for 10 years when we initiated our plan change. It certainly had by the time we'd finished it. However, that's the nature of those, and now we are having rolling reviews, and so it is on the schedule to be addressed.
And I understand that there was a meeting at Okaraka chaired by Phil Thomas, and Phil's not at the council table, but just to two. So yes, that has occurred. I've got down here Councillor Kumar, Councillor Maxwell, and Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Portia and JP, for your report. I too have heard from Neil Kennedy and Margaret Kennedy with respect to this one here, and also assertions that they were, LOCA did not disclose to them or allow them to make submissions. So that's what they are claiming. And also from Dr. Tony Withers this morning, an email of the same genre. So yeah, I'm a bit hesitant at the moment to support it until I sort of get a bit more information.
You assist there, JP, about this now opening the door and the legal status of a spatial plan that can open the door for that next Lakes A zone review. Can you just help,
Your Worship,
Kumar,
we
there?
received speakers from that community who had submitted on the draft spatial plan. We also received submissions from the Lake Okaraka Community Association, who also mirrored the same views, their concerns about potential extension, and that's why in your deliberations it was one of the main issues. And part of that was to say it moved from a now consideration to a next, which said very clearly, and we've stated it within the draft document, that it will be tight. No further options for extension will be considered until the Lakes A zone has been reviewed. So that was the important piece, because that is the district plan provisions which govern any development or extension of residential development within the Lakes A zone. So, Your Worship, I suppose categorically again, LOCA sent a submission opposing growth in Lake Okaraka, and we had a number of residents who submitted on the same basis, and that was part of what you saw in the deliberations. No individual was prevented from making a submission, and as the Chief Executive stated, these have been advertised, documents have been available, and public meetings have been held in that community over that time. So there is a very open and transparent process that got those submissions to your deliberations table and for you to consider.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could you turn the slide to the journey, please? For me, this does help the journey, and we've been informed all along the way. I'd like to ask a question after, but I think Councillor Hunt summed it all up, how things can change over time and that. And over the period of time, reading the reports that came out, I was very interested what happened in an area I grew up in, and that was Nongataha, and hearing from out of all those workshops, huis and various meetings held, that they wanted to see expansion of residential areas and that. Portia, I want to ask you a view. Am I correct that the SHAs, like the special housing areas, were supported by all those meetings and who's held, but were the same people, or were there other people like NIMBYs who put in the opposition to those special housing areas that we had to deal with some recently? I just want to know how you felt about that.
So in my discussions with Ngātaha, because I went out to the community meetings out there, was that Ngātaha was quite happy to, and this was the general feeling of the majority of them, was that they were happy to see some growth out at Ngātaha and on the fringes, because it would add to the viability and the vitality of the village. But also what was really important to them was that it was still seen as a village and that it had some boundaries to it, and that there was that distance between the main urban area and Ngātaha itself. So yeah, those were the conversations out at Ngātaha.
And I attended the same meetings, and actually we got a slap from that community out there, and there was members of Progress Ngātaha who were there saying, here you are back again asking us the same questions. You were here 10 years prior when you did a structure plan for Ngātaha, so the Northern Structure Plan. Why haven't you helped that to happen? Because their aspirations at that stage had been to increase the vibrancy of that community and to see some level of growth to support Ngātaha as a vibrant community. So at that point they said, come on, you're back again, get on with it. However, clearly the other issues that are raised, and they are the issues that do get raised when there are concerns about the impact of growth, which is transport, traffic congestion, the availability of parks, and the pressure on community infrastructure like schools. So they are always raised as the sort of the caveats on, we support this, we would like to see this happen to add to our community, but these issues need to be recognised and addressed with growth. And I think that's been one of the key focuses of this spatial plan, was to be very clear that we're seeing a degree of growth as an opportunity to enhance our communities. And that's the issues there raised about creating new jobs, enhancing communities and sense of community in place, and improving those links, and also the sustainability of our communities. So it is an enabler to a degree, as opposed to always being seen as a problem or a risk. So that was some of the conversations that have been held, particularly with communities like Okaraka. There is an opportunity here as much as a risk or a concern. But as I say, that community was very clear in its messages to us, that they feared the loss of a close-knit sense of community or uncontrolled expansion, which would have affected the sort of the community spirit out there. So that was a big concern for them.
Thank you, JP. And Portia, and what I was going to say also is that I support the motion.
I too got Mr Withers' phone call and his email, and notwithstanding what Councillor Hunt has said, and I support everything you've said, Councillor Hunt, timeline cannot be questioned. However, we have a pocket of individuals who believe they have not been involved in the process for one reason or other, and I don't buy into the issue regarding Henry Weston. That's irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. What I'm concerned about, and JP has now got a copy of the email, are the 7 bullet points that he raises. He's not a protester or someone who's radical. These are our ratepayers. These are people who live in our community. They're not absentee landowners. They live in our community that have a concern for their environment. The issue that I've got, and notwithstanding I'm pleased that is still up there on the board, is that he contended to me yesterday in phone call that for some reason or another he was advised 2 days before submissions closed that submissions were required. Now, as I said in my opening remarks, Councillor Hunt, notwithstanding what you said, and I accept what you said, the net went wide. He's a doctor, he missed the boat, and 2 days before the consultation finished. So all I think what Councillor Kent and I am asking is not, I don't want to delay this, but I just want the issues that he raises given some recognition, because on page 20, under Lakeside Villages, it quite clearly states, any options for enhanced neighbourhood centres will be considered at Lake Okaraka, Rotorua and Rotorua as part of any further growth options studies and district plan review. And you talk about on page 21 of our agenda that the lakes, you talk about the Lakes A zone. It's not referred in here. I've gone through this, which we got today, but it's not referred to. And I agree with you, Councillor Hunt, that the Lakes A zone is a safety valve in terms of what Mr Withers is contending in the 7 bullet points. So I don't think it's a state of someone trying to sabotage the document at all. He has serious concerns about the 7 bullet points. He's not opposed. He realises that our community is growing and that it has changed. And I found him very, very receptive in terms of the recognition that our district has changed, which is what the spatial plan is identifying and acknowledging. But a recognition that the Lakes A zone is the safeguard to development, as you alliterated, Councillor Hunt, isn't here. It talks about the district plan, but not the Lakes A zone review. So I
could just show you where it is. Yeah.
Sorry, Your Worship. Bullet point 5 in the box on the right at the bottom of page 20. Lake Okaraka and Lake Tarawera investigate options for growth, etc., as part of the Lakes A zone review in consultation with the community.
I'm not on that. Where's page?
So, Councillor, can I also just refer you to the text under
Page
build
19.
homes that match needs? So this is on page 17 of the document, and we've put in there lakeside communities. And if I just read the passage, hopefully it shows that we've been really clear about the message we received back from those submitters. So what we've got on there is, under lakeside communities, there is land available at Lake Okaraka for new homes, and this lakeside community has reticulated sewage system capable of servicing more homes. However, other infrastructure, e.g. water supply, is limited for most lakes and currently acts as a constraint to growth. Lake Tarawera could also include additional homes once the community has a reticulated sewage scheme. However, additional residential development in lakeside communities will need to achieve a low level of risk to natural hazards, so that's one of the issues that was raised, as well as to be able to connect to reticulated systems capable of servicing them. For this reason, future growth at Lake Okaraka is noted as next and will be considered as part of the district plan Lakes A zone review, looking at environmental and recreational outcomes in consultation with the community. So that's on page 17. So
17.
Yeah. Thank
17
you
on
for
the
that.
document. So it's under lakeside communities, and as Your Worship has noted, there's a number of other points where we've referred to constraints or the importance of the Lakes A zone. We had a number of submitters saying that part of our district had significant values that needed to be protected, and we've gone to significant efforts to make sure that's referenced within the document as an important part for us going forward. The other references probably that have been made in here is a number of comments made by other lakes that weren't part of the Lakes A zone, that they're sort of saying, well, actually, Lake Rotorua, Rotoiti, Rotoehu are also of significant value, and we should be considering in the future what level of protections we provide to all of our lakes, not just those within the Lakes A zone.
Madam, thank you for that reply, JP. I know I appreciate the references to that. However, I'm not going to support the adoption of the spatial plan unless I get an undertaking that the issues that Mr Withers, which are serious issues, which could involve judicial review, which could delay the whole thing anyway, if the majority do support the adoption of the spatial plan, that's fine, that's your choice, but I do want an assurance through you, Your Worship, that the issues that Dr. Withers raises in his email, that he gets some recognition and some acknowledgement, and even if it's explaining exactly what you've explained to me, JP, that may satisfy him. I can't speak to him right now, but the issues that he's raised with Councillor Kent and myself, that reference on page 17, from my point of view, and what I read of his email, and that commentary, that satisfies me, that there will be environmentally sustainable development at Lake Ukaraka next, not now, but in the future, under a review of a lakeside zone in a district plan. That makes sense to me, but I think it behoves some explanation to Mr. Withers, whether it's from you, JP, or Portia, or both of you. I think that would satisfy most of us around the table.
I'm hearing you clearly. You are taking one submitter that's emailed us last night and wanting to just have a response from council staff about the next steps, and then you'd be supportive. Thank you, Councillor Gould. Now, Councillor Gould, you had a question, then Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I did take a call 2 nights ago from a resident. I'll put that on record, and I did email a certain officer about his concerns. My question to you is, why can't we defer this decision for 1 month so that the officers can come back to us with the necessary right answers?
Look, that's a very, it's a peculiar aberration to a process that's gone on since 2016 to hold up the adoption of a non-legal binding document that clearly states that there is going to be a process for those concerns to be addressed. That shouldn't stop us adopting the spatial plan. Could you just answer that?
Your Worship, and again, I can give the undertaking I will meet again with Dr. Withers. So I have met with Dr. Withers.
Well, there you are.
And in conjunction with other members of the Locker executive within the last month. Yeah, so I can follow up again on that. Your Worship, the issues that are raised in the letter, in the email, I can see there the 7 points. I believe we have addressed. A spatial plan is not where you consider the suitability of land. That becomes a consenting issue. Or at the highest level, only on a natural hazard mapping exercise, which we've referenced within the plan. Population growth, we've talked about population growth. Impact on the natural environment, again, that becomes a set of objectives within the district plan where any development would be evaluated. It's not a spatial plan issue other than us citing and identifying the objectives, and actually we've cited in here that we have an ambition to improve our natural environment. Vision 2030, there's no particular reference there.
Hearing that you will respond again.
All of these can be addressed. And councillors, can I, again, this is a submitter who's proposing flaws in our process, and I think I've identified that we've been through a significant consultation and involvement process. I also note that the email address that's listed under Dr. Withers is Protect Lakes A. So there's a particular perspective being applied to the submission here.
Madam Chair, can I just explain why that occurred? Because Dr. Withers, I asked him to email me that, and he had to do it through another party because he didn't have the facility his own, so he went to the Protect Lakes A zone.
Isn't it? I thought it was. She's a woman, so if you've all spoken to a gentleman, it may be somebody else. But Councillor, we've still got some councillor questions. Councillor Kent, Bentley first, then Kent, then Rotorua, will take then Tapsell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to support everything that Councillor Kent brought up, and his suggestion of letting it lay on the table until these things can be sorted would be advantageous to possibly the legal costs which we may well incur if a judicial review was forthcoming. So for that reason, I think that we should leave it on the table and come back with the answers. And I apologise, I've got another appointment.
Councillor Rotorua Tate, or Kent, and then Rotorua Tate. Sorry, Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did hear JP say that, I think I heard him say that this report would go to the RMA committee, and I'm not sure for what purpose, so perhaps you could explain that to me.
No.
Maybe I got that wrong, but before that, can I just say I certainly want this
Yes.
I'm going to vote in support of this today. Look, I was in Auckland last week, and I can tell you at the conference that I attended, and there was developers, you know, bankers, every other councils, all of those people, and they all want an overarching
That's right.
plan that they can do their own planning from, that they can refer to from their own plans, and ASAP. I know this isn't a statutory requirement. We're doing something that'll help ourselves, obviously, and those who are going to be involved in the growth of Rotorua. And, you know, growth can be challenging, but, you know, it's just, we've got to get on with it.
Yes.
Absolutely. So I'm certainly going to support this.
Councillor Tapsell. Oh, sorry, Councillor Kent. I've got a list too. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think you're all missing the point here. The point is that Dr. Withers has actually pointed out to us that information provided to us upon which we make a decision is flawed. That technically is grounds to have the whole document canned in a judicial review because we were provided with incorrect information. I believe that we should just step back and get a legal opinion on that before we just dive in boots and all for no purpose. There's no point in approving this
JP, do you want
any
to respond?
faster.
Yep.
Your Worship, I've read the email now.
Yes.
And you were not provided with inaccurate or incorrect information through which to make decisions, and you have seen all the submissions that have been received through a public process.
Was the Re Anderson Consulting report, did it include this table or didn't it? Because if it did include this table, we were provided with incorrect information.
We asked Re Anderson to undertake a review of the document we had received. It was an input for us to assist us in putting forward a deliberation report, and that was also, so we took that forward to say, well, what, again, is a subjective analysis that then you have to make decisions on, and on the basis of the recommendations that you make as a group of councillors.
The recommendation from Re Anderson Consulting, if these figures have been quoted correctly from it, let's get that straight because we don't have the actual report here, we've only got what is purported to be in the report. But if these figures are correct, then the recommendation is based on a sham. It's an utter nonsense, the figures that were produced in this table. To actually go out with a document saying we've actually made decisions on the future of Rotorua based on a sham set of figures is stupid.
Do you want to speak to that? Because that's rather inflammatory, but it may be fundamentally significant.
Look, I think it's important to come back to the nature of the decision being made here. And fundamentally, the decision, whether you want to make it or not, is whether or not you are open and support the concept of a further discussion with respect to the development in the Okeraka or Lakes A zone area. Now, that's effectively the only decision that you're making here. What the contrary decision would be is that what you'd effectively be saying is that there is no ability or you do not support any decision as to any further discussions with regards to the notion of development in this area. It would be taken off the table effectively. So all you are doing today is effectively in the spatial plan saying, yes, we think that it is worthy of further discussions with the community in the context of a Lakes A zone review to actually consider what could development look like, what could be possible here. Taking, and of course that process under the Lakes A zone process would take all matters into account, ranging from environmental impacts, the desirability of the community, the views of mana whenua, the desirability of future development with regard to infrastructure. There's a raft of issues that need to be canvassed when you actually look at the conversation of development in the Lakeside Zone concept. So really that is the only decision being made today.
Thank you. Councillor Tapsell.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I think that kind of flows quite nicely onto where I was going to talk about today. And at the end of the day, we're enablers of growth. We have no say in whether there's development. The question I was going to ask, but it's already been answered, was just to clarify for that community that there are other formal processes that will ensure, or that will come into play if there are any developments, and that's the district plan, and also all the way down to consenting processes. So they are very protected in that terms. In our agenda on page 55, they're actually highlighted as limited capacity for growth. And on that page we say, by identifying locations for new homes and employment, we can plan for future infrastructure requirements. And that's the key thing that we're discussing here in the spatial plan, is as we grow to 2050 and we have 100,000 people, population of that, what is the infrastructure that council needs to put in play to enable that development, and to enable it, as we mentioned, in a way that's not ad hoc. And no one knows this more than the children that I saw when we went out to the schools, all the way in 2016 and 17, and we discussed the spatial plan with them. And we gave them those 7 key priorities, of which enhancing environment was in there, and thank you for putting in additional aspects to that. But also an important one is homes that match needs. Now, the only reason we're even considering the lake zone is because with a population of 100,000 by 2050, we're going to need 550 new homes a year starting from now. Now, as someone that's looking for a first home, as someone that knows that in 10, 20 years, those children are going to be looking for their first home, let alone all the people we're attracting through business growth, this plan right here, I am so pleased to see, because it's something that's really going to pave the way for us. It's something that I'm not surprised other cities are looking at and say, because I can guarantee you, people in Auckland and people in Tauranga would have thought, I wish if we'd done that earlier. So I'm more than happy to be moving this. As I said, we are enablers for growth, and this spatial plan is only going to guide and direct that. And just before I close, I must, as the member of the Lakes Community Board, also mention that they are working alongside this community. They have acknowledged and taken in the concerns that they have. I have as well, but just reassurance to the Lakes Ukarika community that there will be a robust process and consultation to come.
Thank you. And it was a thought that we may, at the end of our questions, ask Phil to the table, who did attend both meetings, and I'm open for that. That may help us. Councillor Donaldson, then Hunt.
Thank you, Worship. I think Councillor Tapsell summed it up eloquently, and so I don't have a lot more to add, but I just would caution councillors about getting the wobbles with 1 or 2 people who say, I wasn't consulted. And I reflect on 5-year journeys on sewerage scheme project steering committees where we have consulted, held public meetings, consulted through ratepayer groups, and right now we're trying to implement a sewerage scheme where people are still saying, you're not putting one of those things on my property because I wasn't consulted and wasn't part of it. So there will always be someone who says they weren't involved. Now, my understanding is that one of the landowners with aspirations for growth has not been included in the community conversation that was happened out there. You need to be very cautious about the dynamics that happen within communities, and I think we need to take a clear steer from the Lakes Community Board that the consultation has happened in a robust way, and I'm perfectly satisfied with that, and I support the motion.
Councillor Hunt.
Just want to clarify some of that information that came through that email. My understanding is that as councillors, we made our decisions on the information we had from feedback. from the submission process. And the Ree Anderson piece of work was in fact a piece of work that staff used. It didn't come to us. I don't believe I've seen that before, and I don't believe it formed any part of our decision making. So to say that it's erroneous, I have no opinion either way, because it wasn't a piece of information I based any of my decision making on, and it wasn't a piece of information that came before any of the councillors around the table during our decision making. It's appeared now. I don't know how she got it, how it appeared. It was a piece of work staff commissioned for their own background information. Now, our staff commission enormous amount of information in order to inform all of our decision making. Mostly we don't see it, thank goodness, because it would be a mile high. And that's their job. Our job is to have that information given to us in a format that assists our decision making and to listen to those submitters. I fulfilled that duty. Those sitting around the table fulfilled that duty. That's what we based these decisions about Lake Okaraka and other communities in our district on. We did not base it on that. So any criticism of that, for me, actually has no weight. And I do have a question. For a non-statutory document, how could there be a judicial review?
Yes.
It holds no legal weight. It is our collective aspirations and a guiding document for us. It is guiding the conversation. It's recording the conversations we've had. It's putting our track where we want to go. We're telling everyone, this is the direction we're heading, folks. And every so often we'll have another review of it. And every time we come to any significant thing, including Lakesay, we'll sit down, we'll go through a proper hearing process. You'll all get your opportunity to submit. This is a document that actually is up here. It is not the nuts and bolts and the minutiae, and we shouldn't let it get stuck down by, unfortunately, people who come to the party late. And I'm not dismissing their concerns. They're very valid, and I understand it, and it happens often. But actually, it cannot derail our processes. We must continue the process. We must pass this today. We must give that guidance and that hope and aspiration for our community, because they've been waiting for it, and the whole country's watching us, because they've all been waiting for someone to take the lead in this as well. So I would like to move that.
Thank you. And Phil, I just wondered, would you like to come to the table? I just think we need to hear, because you've been the council representative politically that's been at these meetings, and that may help us all.
Madam Chair, 99.999% of the information, it's just fabulous. What is documented here, detailing suburb by suburb, the objectives, etc., etc. In view of the email, and I listened to the gentleman, I listened to Withers very openly, with an open mind, but with the reassurances on page 17, 18, 19, 20 and 21, with the map in particular, which specifically states as part of the Lakesay Zone review consultation with the community. And on page 17, as JP read out, for this reason, future growth at Lake Okaraka is noted as next and will be considered as part of a district plan Lakesay Zone. Bearing in mind what Councillor Hunter said and others, there are assurances and safeguards there that the community will have full and frank discussions on where that occurs and if it occurs. What this document states and highlights is we need to put in the infrastructure. We've got infrastructure in certain other places where growth can't occur at the moment, but those are all highlighted. So in view of that, and that clause on page 70, I will be supporting the spatial plan, because as Councillor Hunt said, this is an overarching document that it pays effect to, and I know one of my plans was up there, the sport and recreation plan, the other plans, the 2030 vision, etc. So this overarches that and gives a clear indication to people outside of Rotorua that we haven't got our head in the sand, that we're forward thinking and that we want this place to move forward. So in view of that, I will be supporting the motion.
Phil, do you want to just give some observations that may help us? There'll be more.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I didn't receive Dr. Winter's email, so I can't comment on things particularly in it, but just a couple of things that I've heard in the debate. I would like to reassure Council that, as you know, I was an ardent supporter of this concept of a spatial plan right from the start, and the Lakes Board was very active, engaging all our communities. We actually gave over one of our community board meetings to Lake Okaraka to discuss the spatial plan in April last year. We had a good turnout for that and a good debate. We also went back out to that community in October and had another full meeting out there. So we did engage as much as we could with them. You know, our meetings are all advertised. I'm sure you're aware from attending the AGMs out there that it is a very politically active area. So I felt reassured that most people were aware of what was happening in the spatial plan. And I think those of us that attended the World Cafe workshop we had in here, we had quite a number of people from Lake Okaraka come along to that. And we also had a lot of submissions at our formal hearing process in here at Council from Lake Okaraka on it. Look, and I would just like to make one other comment, because there was a suggestion that there might have been a conflict of interest with the chair of the Lake Okaraka Community Association last year, actually being an employee of Council. I've got to say that, and I have the emails for it because I really believe in transparency, so I have all my community board emails going back to 2013. I have an email from that person respectfully excluding himself from the discussion on the spatial plan, and saying that he would pass me on to someone else on the committee to work with when we were even organising the workshops. So I just want to reassure everyone that the gentleman concerned has acted with the highest level of integrity as far as I'm concerned, and not just on that issue, but through the whole time that he had those two roles.
Thank you. Right, I think we've had a lot of debate. Is it something new, Councillor Kurma? Yes.
Yes. I'm partly supportive of it, but the two areas, like I said, is going back to what Councillor Phil Bentley said, as well as what Rob Kane said. But the other issue that bugs me is creating the master plan for the changes for Springfield Golf Course for home. And I've always been opposed to it, and I know everyone that I've spoken to has been opposed to it. So where it came over that it's going to be included in the spatial plan that people have submitted for the growth of it, I can understand. If we are going to be 100 to 120,000 people, we will need the sporting facilities. Where are we going to provide this facility once we take it away from them? If we're looking at 2050, if that's our master plan for growth, 120,000 people, where are we going to fit them with only one golf course in there? So those are my concerns, and the people that I represent will jump up and down and probably boycott my shop more if this golf course dream goes ahead.
But a spatial, not just about a golf course, it's much bigger than that. But I understand where you're coming from, and your comments are pertinent. Councillor Kent, and then we'll put the motion.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like some clarification, please, from the Chief Executive concerning a couple of claims that have been made around this table as to the legal status of a spatial plan. I was under the impression that the councils were required to produce a spatial plan. No. If so, what is the legislation? If there is no legislation involved, can you confirm that the spatial plan cannot be challenged by a judicial review?
I think Councillor Hunt summed it up very well, where it's a non-statutory document effectively, but it does actually provide, therefore, having said that, it does at a high level provide guidance and direction as to how council should proceed. Because of that, and like any decision of council, it is potentially reviewable. Having said that, though, is that the nature of the review has to also reflect the nature of the document and the nature of the decision being made. if you look at the question with regards to was adequate consultation, for example, undertaken in this instance, it would be hard from my point of view to see how an argument could be made, given that there was a public process, there were submissions called, individuals were able to actually participate in that process. There were at least two, we've heard, meetings specifically undertaken in the Karaka community through the Residents Association, so that was therefore another mechanism outside of the formal mechanism that was provided. So it would be hard to see how a lack of consultation could be seen to be adequate grounds for a review. You've also raised the question of consulting advice that staff seek. And of course, again, Councillor Hunt, I think, has actually very accurately represented that. We do actually seek a lot of advice externally to look at actually different perspectives, and not all of that advice is in fact used actually on the basis to make decisions. So, as you have actually also heard in this case, it wasn't actually provided. It actually hasn't been given to you as a grounds for decision making. So therefore has been absent in the process.
Thank you. So now I'm going to put the motion to the vote that Council adopts the final spatial plan for implementation. All those in favour, please say aye. A mover, we had a mover, Karen,
moved it,
and seconded Donaldson. Donaldson? Sorry, I thought we'd done that. Karen had signalled she was moving, that's right.
Just put it again.
I call for a mover and a seconder for the motion that Council adopts the final spatial plan for implementation. A mover? Now? Seconder? Councillor Donaldson. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? Carried. And that is a very significant step for this council, but I do think it was a very robust debate too, and we got our head around the status of this guiding document. So now I have a resolution to go into public excluded, and I'll advise there are 3 items for a consideration in public excluded: to adopt the confidential minutes of the meeting 26th of July, recommendation from other committees, and the presentation on the partnership proposal. Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Rotorua Tate. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried, and we'll have a 5-minute break. Yeah, very good. Yeah, very. That, a good meeting.